If I were to say on a banner or a bumper sticker, Black people have something to prove, that we're not more criminal, that we don't neglect our children, that we're just as smart as anybody else. We have the burden of dispelling the suppositions about us that some people are inclined to arrive at based upon what they see in the world. I want to drill down on the point. Okay, so here's McWhorter. McWhorter says the issue is the test. When it all is boiled down to it, the issue is the Blacks and the Latinos, especially the Blacks, are getting low scores on average on the tests. And all of this smoke, all of this stuff they've thrown up in the air is a cover for the terrifying possibility that we might not be that smart on average. I assume the McWhorter that I know and love thinks we actually are on average, at least in our basic inherent capacities as smart. But he doesn't want us to be exempted from having to certify that we actually have command over the material by doing the test. Okay? So this dodge that people are willing to engage in about getting rid of the test, where they really are living in bad faith, they're not actually facing the existential challenge. They're not taking life seriously in a way. I'm putting words in your mouth now, but this is what I hear. And you're just not going to stand for it. And what I want to ask you is, how do you know it's not true that we're not as smart if we're not doing that well on the tests?
Yeah, that's a legitimate.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate question. And we're going to get in trouble for even discussing it. But anybody who thinks we can't discuss it is being religious and not logical. Yeah, how do I know? And you know what? I don't know. However, I sense it very powerfully from my experience with people of all colors over the past 57 years. And I don't think that we've been given a chance to show what we can do. And, one thing that makes it rather clear to me is, as we've discussed, kids of African and Caribbean ancestry have much less of a problem with this sort of thing than Black American kids. I don't know of data that show that a Nigerian immigrant's kid does better on those sorts of tests, but I know anecdotally that it is certainly true that, that things like the SAT don't throw that kid as easily as they throw a native-born Black American kid. And frankly, it's the same genes, or if anything, here in America, there's more mixture with white people. And so for me, that is one piece of evidence that it's cultural. And this is very anecdote, but I'm going to use it because I was thinking it as I saw it. On my way, I'm not going to, I can. On my way back from Antwerp, back from Brussels, I had occasion to be near a guy. And he was, you could tell from, little things he would say to the flight attendant, tea or coffee or something like that. He's a Black American man. He wasn't African. He wasn't Caribbean. He's from Cleveland or something. And he's on the plane. It was a 7.5-hour flight. I happened to notice that this guy had no reading material of any kind, never picked any up. He didn't have a Kindle or anything like that. He didn't read the whole time. He didn't watch a movie. He didn't watch any TV. At one point, he picked up the little thing that shows pictures of what you're supposed to do if the plane crashes, as if anybody would be alive down there to do it. But he takes a look at that, and then he takes a look at the magazine, but he never really reads it. That guy just sat there the whole time, often just looking off into space. And he wasn't that sleepy. He wasn't sleeping most of the time. And you know what? Now, there could have been any number of things going on, but I remember looking at him and thinking, he's not interested in anything whatsoever. He doesn't have any interest. He's a human being without any interest. And it got me thinking, I wonder if he grew up in a home where he was never pointed towards anything in the natural give and take of things. What's interesting? What do you look at? What do you pay attention to? In his upbringing, clearly nothing much. Now, that may not have been a Black story. It may have just been him. But I remember thinking, the difference here, I'm very close to done. The difference here is that you imagine South Asian kids growing up where even if their parents aren't intellectuals, there's a sense just from intonation, you better do well on that test. You have to worry about that test. I don't think that guy's parents spoke that way. They didn't say, don't pay attention to the test, but they weren't telling him to be interested in anything. Now, I'm on thin ice here because I don't know anything about this person, but it got me thinking about how people are raised. What interests you? That's culture. That's not his brain or his IQ, I
admire your courage and your candor because, you are kind of out there on a limb. You're talking about culture and people get mad at you. and it's anecdotal. You're
Mhm.
telling a story about a particular person. You don't have systematic data, so they'll say
Yeah,
you don't know what you're
one
talking
guy I don't
about.
even know. Yeah.
Although it has the power of the novelist anecdote in the sense that, the vivid, concrete illustration captures something that we all know from our common sense lived experience, as it were, is true about people. And I expect the generalization that you're making across racial ethnic lines is broadly true. I mean, I think it's hard to deny that. But I want to step back a little bit because I want to distinguish between this argument, the causal argument. We have differences in performance on the test. What are the rudimentary bases of these? Is it, some kind of genetic thing going on? Is it a cultural thing going on? The causal argument, and we could argue about that all day. But there's a difference between that and the philosophical kind of existential. I keep wanting to use that word again because I'm thinking about the existentialist. I'm thinking about the idea of living up to the possibilities of your freedom, about being honest with yourself about life. And the idea that you don't know for sure about the inferiority question, about the question, okay, they're doing less well on the test. How do you know it's because they're not just on average less intelligent? You don't believe it. I don't believe it. You don't want to believe it, but you don't know. And the temptation to run from the inescapable necessity of demonstrating your competence both to others and to yourself by embracing this narrative of historical victimization and this kind of, you think you get an exemption, this kind of uh, uh, I'm going to trump your performance card with my moral claim, my claim of, anti-racism in this case. Uh, the equity move that you're critiquing is in a way a kind of try to play that card that the historical mistreatment of my people therefore entitles me to be exempt from, your enforcing of a certain standard of judgment. Um, and I think there's no way around that dilemma, the dilemma of having to demonstrate your competency. I mean, if I were to say on a banner or a bumper sticker, Black people have something to prove, that we're not more criminal, that we don't neglect our children, that we're just as smart as anybody else. We have the burden of dispelling the suppositions about us that some people are inclined to arrive at based upon what they see in the world. And we don't, that's respectability politics. They have a name for it. I mean, the idea that you would even take that up. So I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but one of the things that terrifies me about getting rid of the test is it concedes. It calls the whole thing off when we haven't actually done the job yet.
Yeah, that's exactly
And
it.
that's not equality, man. That is so far from equal dignity, from a sense of equal standing, from being able to look people in the eye and feel confident within yourself that you're their peers. That's horrible.
It is.